Well, I'm meant to be working on some overdue late school assignments right now, but there is a topic that keeps coming back to mind quite often. And I feel like having a yap session to myself only, because there is no one else I can rant to right now. I mean, it's not really a rant, it's more like a sort of social commentary on how the world has become and how it's quite different now. It came up in conversation with my mum because I'm not sure. I think it came because tomorrow is gonna be it's gonna be 24 degrees, but it's gonna feel like 28, and so we got onto the discussion of, global warming slash climate change. I know it's not really global warming anymore, it's climate change, because not only is it becoming hotter in summer, but obviously colder in winter, and so on. But basically, what I was saying is that it's just, it's very disappointing that, not only disappointing, I don't even think that quite reaches the level of disappointment that and frustration and overall just anger, I guess, that a lot of people under 30 feel towards what is planned for our future, because as I was discussing with my mum, people who were born between the 50s and the 90s really had it good in terms of, I know obviously there were always some problems. There were wars, there was Vietnam, there was the Cold War, there was a spike in crime, child abductions, teenage pregnancies, so on and whatnot. But it feels like it was common cases, but it didn't apply to almost everyone. Like, not everyone specifically, they weren't impacted by those things. They might have been in a more general sense, but it did not. Most people, I guess, would have said that compared to now and today and how, I guess, we're progressing as a society, I think most, if not all, would say that they did enjoy their 20s when they were, born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I think the last of them, between the 80s and the 90s, and I think people born after 1990 is where it really started to kind of take a hit. And I know it sounds so cringe, like, oh yeah, this 19-year-old is talking about, oh yeah, internet is bad, but I don't know, it's just, I think it's important to acknowledge that the internet, in fact, is such a major component to how things have turned out. And I think that if it was never popularized to this degree, I think things would have been different. Because, it was created, 1997, let's say, I think, it was a very small, user base at the start, I can't deny that. But people were just starting to learn about things, and I think it really took off in the early 2000s. So when I was born, basically. So I was born in 2005. I know that's not the oldest, but it's still the early 2000s, and I think I have such a strong opinion on childhood nowadays, because I did live through one of those childhoods that was transitionary between having a completely screen-free childhood and some aspects being implemented into my life. I was going to use the word daily life, but I think when my age group and I think Generation X were children, I know obviously there's a big span of Generation X? Sorry, Generation Z, what am I saying? Generation X is my mum. No, Gen Z, Generation Z. I think the latter half, so I think 2000s onwards. So when is it? 2000s, and the cut-off year is 2012, I believe. Yeah, so it's 97 till 2012. So I think the 97 until like maybe I think 2001, maybe pushing it to 2002 being the limit. I think those people had a pretty similar childhood to those born in the early 90s. Obviously with like some speckled aspects of internet and technology and whatnot, but not to a degree that it can be talked about quite severely. Unless, I mean, prove me wrong if there's like examples, but from my own knowledge it wasn't as prone. But yeah, anyways, well, most people I'm surrounded by are, well, clearly my age group. So 2005, 2004, some 2006s, 2003 at the limit. I know that in my family friends there are a few people I know from 2002, and then spanning on afterwards, I have a few online friends that I met through gaming and stuff who are born in 2009, and my only brother is born in 2008. So I have quite a range of like experience knowledge on how people have lived their childhoods, I guess. Obviously we have my own and obviously my brother. We are born about 3 years apart, so it's not that much, but it's enough to show that there was a tiny bit of a difference, but we're still pretty much the same. We grew up with not much in terms of technology. My first earliest memories of anything like that was that, so maybe when I was about 5 years old and my brother was, I think, 3, or I was 6 and he was 3, so on. We still had a box set TV, and it was on wheels, and it was upstairs, and my mum would place it like at the end of my parents' bed, and we'd watch DVDs on it. And I think for me and my brother, that was it's just such a good memory to have, because I don't know, I really enjoyed my time like that, and it was not all the time. Eventually we did get a type of sort of a flat screen TV. Obviously now, looking back, we still have the same TV at home. I'm at university at the moment, but yeah. It's an old-fashioned flat screen TV. Think of like a 2009, 2010-ish kind of version. So yeah, we had that. So yeah, I did watch kids TV when I was growing up with my brother. I had an unusual late access to the internet. We first had Wi-Fi installed in our house when I was 9 years old. So in 2014. A lot of people that I've talked to, obviously I think have had it earlier than that. If not, when they were born, their parents already had internet and Wi-Fi connection. So I was a bit of a late, I guess, accessor in that like scenario, I guess. But yeah, And I do kind of feel left out because I know that people my age always talk about, oh yeah, do you remember these online games? When I played when we were in like primary and stuff. And obviously because I was nearly out of primary at that age, so 9. Obviously, in the UK we leave primary at ages 11. So it was close to the end of my time in primary, but I still obviously had access to information about stuff on the internet. So even if I didn't personally like go on the internet or use it myself, I'd hear stuff about it at school, but it wasn't a prominent feature of discussions like in recess or like break time or lunchtime or stuff like that. It was very dispersed. So obviously we had we had mid 2000s memes, obviously. Yeah, early 2000s memes also still dragged around in 2014, I guess. So we grew up on stuff that seems very odd now, I guess. And I know it's very odd saying this because I know that being 19, nearly 20, is absolutely young in the grand scheme of life. It's barely an adult. I've only been an adult for 2 years, which sounds crazy to say because I still feel like I'm just 18, but unfortunately that's not the truth. But yeah, so when I was 10 in 2015, it was like the sort of like emergence of like flat touch screen phones. Obviously I don't have the dates on hand. I'm just kind of talking without a script, like out of my head. But yeah, I think so it was just starting to get popularized, and like flip phones were still big like in 2015. It maybe wasn't the big deal that it was in like the early 2000s when I was born, but like in year 7, so when I was 12 years old in 2017, 2016, 2017, I had my first phone was a flip phone, and that I now just recently bought again because even though it hasn't been that long, it's still quite nostalgic. It was the Alcatel 2012G flip phone, and I loved it, and I still love it now. I've been using it. But yeah, that was my first experience with a phone. Obviously, I was, once again, late to the trends. I was basically the only person who still had a flip phone in 2017. I know it was kind of outdated then, even then. But I feel like, I'm not sure about anywhere else in the world, I have no idea. In America, I know that a lot of stories and TikToks and online and social media stuff comes from there nowadays. But I know that in the UK, the only real social media apps that were popular was Snapchat and Instagram. So yeah, it wasn't at the point where it was like the early 2000s where Tumblr or Facebook was popular. But yeah, Instagram, I'm not sure. I actually can't remember when Instagram was launched. Yeah, don't quote me on that. I have no idea. But I know that Snapchat was popular. But even then, I think at the time, Snapchat, from what I remember, I never really had it. I was just not interested. But, it was just make an account, have all your friends on it, or even if they weren't friends, have, I don't know, people from, just your school, people you actually know in real life, on it, and just have group chats, message it, just post stories, I don't know. But there wasn't any actual posts, posted, or your life couldn't really be made public to a point that it is now, because obviously Snapchat, it's still somewhat popular now in the UK, I think. It's still quite common that people will ask you for your Snapchat instead of anything else, compared to other countries, I think. But yeah, it was, you had to get someone's account to be added unless you just randomly added people from the explore page, I guess, but most people just didn't do that unless it was for fun, and then just obviously didn't have contact with the person and just did it for a joke. But yeah, it was people you knew and you weren't really open to the public. Obviously, Instagram was different, but from my personal experience, Instagram was mainly used with the same purpose of Snapchat. Like, I know that people from my school and me personally, I downloaded Instagram when I was 13, so in 2018. And yeah, I think, yeah, it was quite popular, Instagram in 2018. Obviously, I know it still is now, but I think it's when there was like quite a demand of like, oh yeah, you should download Instagram, like everyone's on there. And yeah, I guess, but yeah, I guess from my personal experience, it was still only people that I knew from school that I would add on there, and most people didn't really post much, I guess. They would just do like random like stories, just a bit like Snapchat, and or if it was posts, like it would just be like random like aesthetic like photos, or like the guys would post like, I don't know, like lads photos or like football or something. I remember my first post on Instagram being this really shittily edited photo of the anime Violet Evergarden, which I watched for the first time in 2018. It's really embarrassing. I don't know, I had like 30 followers, all from my school. But yeah, I think that was my experience, and there was no short form content at all. I actually don't know when that was implemented, but from what I lived through, and I think from what most people my age can say, that YouTube, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just every single app didn't have any form of like short-ish form content. The only thing I think of is Vine, but like I think that was 2015 that was like released, and it like people were using. It was popular, yeah, and obviously there were like the obvious like really popular memes that came from Vine and stuff like that everyone knew, but it was in good humor, and I think it was just like a reference that you can make like socially and most people would know. I think that now it's transformed, especially with the start of all this brain rot culture. Unfortunately, yes, I'm guilty. I do find some brain rot kind of funny, but it's very different, because even though I don't have that much of an age gap with most kids or teenagers who indulge in brain rot, I still grew up with my primarily, like, the thing I would primarily reference were memes. Now it's not even called memes anymore. I don't even think people use that word at all, honestly, and I don't think I've seen anyone use the word meme to describe a video that's like funny or trendy anymore in, I don't know, a couple of years now. I think the last time it was really used, I think, was like 2021, and obviously it's been like 4 years now. But yeah, I think COVID really launched TikTok. I got TikTok in 2019, so it's been 6 years. That's pretty embarrassing. I hate admitting that, but yeah, 2019, I was 15 years old, so I think it's a pretty normal age to, start watching TikToks, I guess. But even then, I think most of that TikTok back then wasn't that damaging. Yes, it was short form content, but me, along with other people, I don't think we used it to a chronic amount. Like, it wasn't part of our day-to-day lives, or if it was like maybe like half an hour a day, and stuff on there was pretty like funny or like constructive. And now I know that a lot of TikTok is, and my For You page is guilty of this, of like drama, just like really sad or disgusting news, or just stuff that kind of puts you down and just isn't really uplifting, you know? And if it's jokes, it's just either inherently unfunny or outright just despicable. Like, it's not funny and it's just gross and it's just not, yeah, it's just not funny. And I think people have lost touch with that aspect of making content that's original, creative, and actually funny. Because a lot of what I see is just TikTok has become very centered around specialized like groups. Like if you're not in a particular bubble on TikTok, you do not know what's going on outside, like inside of it. Like that's why there's so much out of context videos posted a lot. I think a lot of people have noticed this, and it's really frustrating because we've normalized this so much to a point that like, what are we talking about? Like, what is going on? What does that mean? And it's so normalized because people just assume that whoever's gonna interact with the video already knows what's gonna be said, or like they know what you're talking about. And yeah, when I grew up, I was, watching long formatted YouTube videos. I was playing like not how do you explain this? Like, games that are considered more short attention, and then games that like require longer attention. I don't know how to explain it, but like for example, my example is in 2016. My school, this is maybe cringe now, but at the time it was the hype. My school had a Minecraft club, and we would use the school computers to play Minecraft together at like after school, because a lot of us still didn't have PCs or laptops even. I had a laptop, but it was pretty Asian. It definitely could not run Minecraft. So it was stuff like that. But then now you see, obviously, stuff like, like first person shooters and like Fortnite, CSGO and stuff. When CSGO was popular when I was like younger as well. So I guess, that doesn't count, I guess. But stuff like CSGO, Halo, a lot of people played it, but it was a very small group of people. Whereas now you see kids as young as like 8 years old playing Fortnite, or like, I don't even know, like what else is there? I don't know all these games, like it sounds so cringe, like, oh, there's one I really don't like. Anyways, I personally, I do dabble in a bit of Fortnite sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've lost the spew of like my speech. But nevertheless, I think what I was trying to explain is that the latter half of Gen Z grew up with that transition phase between having internet and social media at fingers reach, but still yet prioritizing having a childhood not focused on it. Whereas now it's so sad, and it makes me upset all the time. I go in public and I see extremely young children, like toddlers, like 2 years old, being really young. Some of them, oh my gosh, some of them are as young as still being in a pram. I don't think they can even walk, and they're being given their parents' phones to entertain them. The lack of parent and child engagement has disappeared so much that it's genuinely upsetting to see. And I don't specifically understand why that happened. I think it's just because everyone realized that phones and tablets and whatnot were just an easy solution, and people became lazy when it came to parenting. Obviously, this is not all kids, and there are genuinely people who are born after 2010 who still had the similar experience that a lot of people before 2010 had. But I think even though 2012 is the cutoff for Gen Z, I think that, in my personal opinion, I think the cutoff is 2010. Because 2010, what, they're like 15 now? So, yeah, I have a few online friends that have been 15. But anything before that, anything I come across that's either in comments, online, discussions, news stories, just anything really, of children, because they are children. Yes, they are teenagers under 15, obviously 13 and 14, but that's a very small age, it's just 2 years. Children being online and falling for, I don't know, things like rage bait, things like hate, things like trolling. Obviously, people with a more mature mind can clearly differentiate, or even if they can't, they can deal with things like that. But an 8-year-old that's finding themselves on Twitter or places like TikTok and or even Instagram, that has become such a bad app for that. And yeah, not only is it because more like younger children are joining these apps earlier, but I think there has been a shift in how social media has become like to be used. I think before there wasn't as much hate. Obviously, yes, there's always been controversies, there's always been trolling, there's always been hate since the dawn of the internet. That's nothing new. But I think the pure amount of it and the fact that it's found absolutely everywhere and it's rampant is the issue. So many people, and not even kids or teenagers, even adults, are being exposed to the most delirious like arguments or media that even me, I've been adult for 2 years now, so I've kind of settled into it. Obviously I'm not 25 yet, so my frontal lobe hasn't developed, I guess, but I'm mature enough to, see how dangerous and just harmful and hurtful stuff like that can be. But even sometimes I see things online that still hurt me, and it's hard to separate yourself from communities online and in real life. Obviously the people, I'm guilty of being one of the people who agree kind of with the thing that's like, if you suffer online bullying or online hate or something happens to you online, just turn off your phone. But I do understand that for children who are much younger, that is close to impossible to ignore. Even if you do shut off your phone, the things that have been said towards you or the things you have seen don't leave you. And I can talk this from a personal level because unfortunately, when I was still quite young, so 14 years old, I think 13 at the earliest, so when I had just first, stepped into the realm of social media and just internet in general, I had downloaded Discord because at the time that was also quite popular in 2018, 19, and 2020, and so on. And I was unfortunately exposed to a lot of different horrible things, to be honest, that a 14-year-old shouldn't have to deal with. Just, the obvious harassment, being immature but also gullible. I think that's a very big part of it. And even though now I still do think and I still agree with the fact that at 14 years old, you're still old enough to know when to put a stop to it, but you're also still in that stage where things do hurt and things do touch you. Obviously, it doesn't hurt me anymore. I've completely moved on from those things. It doesn't have an effect on my life anymore. But at the time, it's really heavy for a 14-year-old to deal with. And even afterwards, I don't know if anyone else went through this, but in 2020, because lockdown was present and everyone, I guess, had nothing else to do. There was a lot of quote unquote Discord drama. I'm not sure if anyone relates, but yeah, that was a big like factor in my life. But at that time, I was 15. When lockdown ended and COVID kind of settled down, I was 16. I was 2 years off from being an adult. Now, if you put that in relation to how young people are now who experience the same things that I fortunately or unfortunately experienced in like the mid teenagers, there are preteens who are going through things like this, and I don't know, I think as a society there has been such a shift, and I think a lot of people have become a lot more hateful for no reason. I still am not able to pinpoint the exact reason for that. I've seen the shift. I've talked to multiple other people, and I've also been told that they have noticed a shift in how everything has been going on. Obviously the world, how it's been going on, yes, it's decreased in quality of life over the last 5 years or so. I do think that COVID and the whole pandemic and the year 2020 was just the last straw on the camel's back that really broke it. And since then, I think it's just progressively gotten worse and worse. In all aspects of life, to be honest. I don't think there is one single aspect that has not been affected, whether it's schooling, whether it's work, whether it's social, whether it's media, whether it's hobbies even. I feel like, because even if you want to get to stuff, either people judge you, it's too expensive, cost of living, stuff like that. Everything is expensive, both quite literally, but also mentally. Everything costs a lot nowadays, and it's quite heavy. But circling back to my point, I think that, there has been such an obvious change of just in the society in general, and I still can't pinpoint what it is. I've tried to talk to people about it. Obviously, like, I'm not expecting answers. They're just, part of the same problem as I am experiencing. But yeah, I just like to know other people's opinions on this, and it's kind of why I'm just rambling to myself for like half an hour straight, which probably most people won't even listen to. I didn't even plan this recording at all. I don't have a script. I'm just looking at my screen and just recording my voice. I don't even think that it's gonna get like any views at all because it's long, it's unedited, and honestly, I don't really care. I just really like to talk about this subject because it is quite concerning to me, in all honesty, that it has come to this point. Since I'm quite a boring person, I have nothing else in my life to do. Well, I mean, schoolwork. I really should be doing that right now. But yeah, I think I'll still, I don't know, I'm just gonna upload random social commentary that, I don't know, that I want to. I'm not expecting any viewer attention at all, but anyways, if anyone at all has listened literally to my rambling until this point, I'm genuinely so happy that anyone actually cares to listen to what a random fucking person with no subscribers and no previous, like, views that much, cares. So, yeah, well, I'll see what comes next, and, right, thank you then, I guess.